Talking a little bit, I'll ask.
Okay. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
All right.
Can they hear us? Oh, okay, perfect. And do they have a way of letting us know if for some reason they suddenly can't hear us?
Yeah. They should say on the.
Okay.
You'll be able to hear it. Just talking and unmute themselves, but you'll
Okay.
be good.
I'm going to hear you fine.
Okay.
Here you go.
Great. So Rhonda Venner, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I worked at Mercy in the New England Eating Disorders program for 14 and a half years, working with people at all levels of care with eating disorders.
I'm Amy Taylor Graham, and I'm a dietitian also working at the New England Eating Disorders program for, I think, 14 as well, and now in private practice here in Portland, mainly specializing in eating disorders.
And I'm private practice at Pineland in New Gloucester, also primarily working with people with eating disorders. So just to kind of say, what we thought we were supposed to do is different from what apparently you thought we were going to do. So what we thought was, we're happy to spend this time however with whatever it is that you need. So initially we thought we were going to talk about family-based treatment for adolescents with or children with anorexia nervosa. But apparently, you all thought maybe that we were going to do a talk on binge eating disorder, which we're also happy to do. That's what we initially actually said that we were going to do. So we didn't prepare that, but that's okay, because, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. So we wondered, like, what kinds of things would be helpful for you to know about any diagnosis, whether it be bulimia nervosa, anorexia nervosa, binge eating disorder, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, any of the spectrum of eating disorders we're happy to speak about. Do you have specific things you were hoping to get today that would be useful?
So I'm Melissa about for 10 minutes.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Spoken to you many times.
Yeah. So I would say that now we're sort of in the midst of sending out referral survey, and one of the things that we have struggled a little bit with is the role of nutritionists for a teen who's gone through sort of a family-based treatment program, because we're getting mixed reports on whether they need nutrition or not. And then the other question I have is just in terms of guidance for us on making effective referrals and responding effectively to the feedback that you guys have for us.
Yeah. So the dietitian's role, I would say, is to support the parents. It's not so much supporting the patient or the child or the teen or whatever. So I support the child and mainly meet with the parents to sort of like make sure that the child is getting enough. So a lot of times parents, so they might be like, oh, this seems like enough is more than they were eating before, but it's really enough, because a lot of times they might need up to 3,000 calories or something like that. Help them basically like trust themselves to know how to feed their child, because they do. They're just afraid because of the eating disorder. And so it's making sure that their weight gain is on track and supporting the parents in increasing as they hit weight plateaus. So very often I'll see somebody who, they were eating 12 calories. Their parents are like, what do you think of this? And they tell me what they're eating, and it's like, 1,600 calories, we're not gaining any weight. And then at 2,000 calories, not gaining any weight, we really need to start a lot higher than that, and they need the confidence to know it's okay and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of, help the child recover And then in supporting Rhonda, who's family certified, right, in state, one of two. Yeah. So with her recommendations for the family, we sort of work as a team in a way. Does that answer your question?
It totally does.
Okay.
Sometimes sometimes I feel like a family, like they really can do exactly what it is that Amy was talking about, like on their own without a dietitian, but because there's so much, there may be guilt about something, so if there was a separation or a divorce or anywhere a parent is left feeling guilty, they have in my experience, they have a very difficult time doing what it is that needs to be done to challenge the eating disorder, because that's initially making things more upsetting for their child, which is very difficult for a parent to do. Sometimes that's the barrier, so I'm working with them around that while sending them to Amy, even though I feel like they technically could do it, know what they would need to do to feed their child, but they really need that additional support, even if it's not the clinical piece as far as like what to feed. They just need that like reassurance that it's okay what they're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes, too, they're afraid to feed them. They like sugar, you know, because we're all afraid of sugar now because of the media and diet culture and everything. And so a lot of times they're, well, you know, we never really ate whatever, ice cream, whatever, but stuff that is pretty necessary in the refeeding process, processed food or fats, things like that, because to do it in all 3,000 calories of whole foods is a lot of volume and oftentimes nearly impossible to do. So need sort of encouragement, like that's okay, like that's what you're supposed to be doing, is, you know, any other eating disorder or any other person.
And that's, you just bring up a good point, because sometimes I'll refer to Amy, we're having difficulty with the volume, and so Amy can help them bring down the density of the food by, you know, like really thinking about high calorie, fat food.
Like juice, things like that, that normally they might not have, but you kind of have to when you're going through this. It's just so hard to get enough calories in, which is kind of surprising for most people.
But right from the beginning, they're just like, they got it. And so they really don't need Amy's support with any of that. They got it, and I keep a graph of what's happening with their weight restoration, if they need weight restore, and as long as we're headed in the right direction, that's fine. Some parents go faster than what someone would do in an eating disorder program, where they have like tons of support. So some parents are just really very, like, they're on top of it, and they know it's life-threatening, and they're like on it. So.
And some don't.
So.
Those are the ones that need help.
You
Kind of like differ to the parents. Like, what I said, you just like wait and see if like having a visit with you would be beneficial.
yeah,
Right off the bat about it.
I've been doing this long enough that I can pretty much tell that first session or two whether somebody's going to need more support or less support.
And then also the weight. So if their weight's not going up, you sort of know, like, okay, something's not, you know, working yet.
Yeah. Another, the Maudsley Family Base is a treatment that's specific for adolescents and children with either anorexia nervosa or bulimia nervosa. And it's like really a standard treatment for adolescents or children with those illnesses. It has a lot of research to support that the rate of success with that particular model of treatment is higher than any other model of treatment. And so that's typically what I use, but sometimes I don't use all the model. It really, again, depends on the family and whether I feel like that's what's needed. But if in that first 6 sessions, for 4 to 6 sessions, if progress isn't being made, it's not going to be made. That's in my experience. If it's taking that long, and that's in situations where there's a high level of stress in the family, both parents are, if there are 2 parents involved, are working, or there's only 1 parent involved and under a lot of stress. Those are situations where there's a divorce, and it's like really a divorce experience, it's probably going to go well. We'll start off and try, but a lot of times those are folks who really do need a high level of care, support for the whole family that patient just can't provide.
How frequently are you scheduling these sessions?
This week, I try to see them twice, because that's the assessment process. And it really depends on how, so if somebody is, let's say someone's coming to me 20% below their healthy body weight. That to me is like, that's urgent, and so I may initially see them like 3 times if I can get them in 3 times in a week. I sometimes will even accommodate them by having them come in on the weekends. Really things that like to get things started and going, usually by that 3rd session for many families, we can get things moving in the right direction. The part that I was thinking might be helpful for you all as well is around like the medical, like what's the role in this? Like once you've referred, like you refer, you know, to Amy and I, and there's an assessment process that happens. We say yes, family treatment seems appropriate. What we really always hope for and tend to receive is for at least weekly medical monitoring for someone who has pretty significant anorexia nervosa, sometimes more than weekly, just to ensure that what we're doing is still safe and appropriate at that level of care for outpatient, and rely on that to make sure. What I find helpful, just because it can get confusing, so let's say Amy and I are working together really closely and finding out that the primary care providers are giving advice, nutritional advice to the family. That gets very confusing, and they don't know who to listen to, and it's often not exactly the same. But Amy and I have worked together for so long, we know what each other, there are no surprises with that, so the family's never going to be confused with us. And so that's the piece, like really just making sure that their vital signs, their cardiac status, all of those things, their work, everything's safe enough for us to continue on that outpatient basis. So more than that, do you want to speak to that?
Well, sometimes if they're doing like a refeeding plan, it would be better to do, although usually I'd much rather have be in the hospital, just because you can't order it. You know, they might say, yeah, I got it, the parents say, we got everything, but then you find out they did something like but then we had ice cream on Saturday, and you're just like, oh God, no. So I usually like to have that done in the hospital, but rarely we've done it outpatient if it's a tight situation with the family and the medical providers and stuff. And that'd be obviously more frequent, probably more like 3 to 5 times a week with the lab work, just so we can advance the meal plan, because again, with the hypermetabolism, if you're eating 1,200 calories a day and that goes for a long period of time, you actually end up losing more weight, and then we're in a worse situation than where we started. So I'd like to increase the meal plan by 300 to 500 calories every day or every other day at least but again, that's pretty rare that it's done outpatient.
Yeah.
Somebody that you are once a week.
In the beginning, for at least the first few weeks, I always feel more comfortable with that, to know that everything's just, there isn't something that we're missing or that really isn't, let's say like there are cases that I can think of that have ended up needing to be hospitalized, or cases where their heart rate was too low. Patient, it was just too low. But I don't know about with labs. I know that's what always, does a lot.
I mean, if there's any, well, I guess you wouldn't do this anyway, but I was going to say if there's any kind of purging thing, are we not sure if they are or something like that?
We don't know they're purging until it comes into it. Yep.
So CME should be across the board.
And this is like a basic question, but I trying to know what this means. So you said like somebody who's not maintaining or 20% below or
their body weight.
Ideal body weight. How are you defining that?
Good question. Because I think we talked about this. I'm not sure if you were at that other meeting.
I was, yeah.
The growth chart.
Right.
We absolutely have to.
It's different for everybody depending on your body, what their, their spend, but if they may not be at an unhealthy weight, they may be below the 50% or something like that, but it could still be 20% if they're lower than their ideal body weight. So just wondering how you find that and how you measure that.
So we use the growth charts if we can get our hands on them. So the pediatric growth charts tell us. So if somebody's at the, even if they're at the 90th and they've always been at the 90th, then we do 20% from that. So the body weight becomes whatever that was.
So not necessarily their ideal body weight, their
I think that's what.
right, their baseline biological,
So we use that even with eating disorder and bulimia and, OPS and all of the other ones. We still consider that their ideal body weight since that's their genetically predetermined weight that their body is happy at, and if they tried to get below that weight, a bunch of other bad things happen in terms of dieting and all this other stuff that we can talk about too with the binge eating disorder stuff. But we can set that to be their ideal body weight, even if it's higher than the BMI, I would say, is healthy. We don't really use the BMI.
No,
Okay.
no, not at all.
Yeah,
They do,
sad.
yeah.
I think she must
It's in there anymore.
It's not part of the criteria anymore, yeah. Yeah. Like, gratefully made that change.
Yeah.
You can actually be, you could even be at the 90th percentile and like have been at the 115th percentile and you could fit the criteria for anorexia nervosa right now,
Yeah.
And is there a timeline to do that? So, again, like somebody who is very obese, like, improvement in their metabolic syndrome until they've lost 20% of their body weight. They're lost 40%.
You're saying the rate they lost the weight.
Right, so
Right.
they're, like, are you looking at the rate? Was there lost weight? Some people, rate of losing weight, maybe that's
eating disorder, they're engaged in behaviors that are not healthy.
Right.
So they did not lose the weight in a healthy way whatsoever. So, I mean, that's,
Look at the other
yeah.
But no time frame that you associate with it. It doesn't have to be like,
Well,
right over this period of time.
it certainly increases symptomology, whatever the word is. They lose it fast. So, I mean, we're looking at all of that, but it's not going to change how I would think about it if they're engaged in self-destructive behaviors.
So it's like 300 to 200 theoretically. I guess if that took them a year to lose that weight, it would depend more on the behaviors than the actual time span.
One of my questions is about the newly 18-year-olds. Is possibly still appropriate for newly 18, or are there, because right now I have one who is just in anorexia mode, 18, still very much subject to parental control because of not graduating, like all of that. So
They're graduating now or the next year.
we're hoping they'll graduate.
Okay.
Now,
No,
next year.
maybe,
Okay.
fingers crossed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's part of why that the eating disorder took on a life of its own, was because that was not going to happen. So I had to have some control.
That's a really tough situation because I would never use that type of treatment unless the adolescent, like so an 18-year-old, a newly 18-year-old, even somebody who's like almost 18. I wouldn't model unless they were on board with it, which is very difficult with this particular illness, anorexia nervosa, because they're egosyntonic, meaning like they actually feel like they feel better about themselves the more they engage in these behaviors, versus like bulimia nervosa, they're ego dystonic. They oftentimes will feel bad about parts of the illness. And so that drives them to be more motivated to do something about it. Whereas with anorexia nervosa, if you're feeling successful and you're feeling good at what you're doing and it's everybody else's problem, not mine, then that becomes a very difficult situation. Sometimes I actually work with parents to help them cope with what's happening with their child and give them suggestions about things that they can do, authority that they still have over their child. That 18-year-old is very unlikely would be able to go out and just be able to, apartments and be on their own, and so they actually have more authority than they think they do. And so sometimes we'll take that approach to it. There was one that I was working with recently. I can't remember if you were also working. I think, yeah, actually you were working with this case, where finally we got to the point where the 18-year-old was willing to go into a higher level of care. And so that actually has worked out pretty well. And that was a lot of working. I primarily worked with the parents. I only met with her twice. I met with the parents like a dozen times. That kind of helped so that we weren't pressuring her at all, because it was pretty clear she did not want to be there. And she did not want to engage in treatment. It's like, I am not into forced anything. It's never go well. Any type of forced treatment, like some states will allow you to actually blue paper with anorexia nervosa into treatment, but I don't think that's ever going to go well because it just increases the power struggle.
Right.
And you can't, then the person has to stay facing it. They don't have an opportunity to really actually find their own internal motivation or what
They're
they
just
want.
fighting the whole time.
Yeah.
I was going to say the other question I have about managing parental denial. So I share a patient who but parent AMA, and sort of we run into the parental denial. Right? And so what are your guys' strategy for parental denial? Really lack of tolerance for the child. Sort of at what point is it a DHS issue? At what point is it a child protective report?
It's a protective report or a DHS issue unless the child or adolescent needs inpatient level of care. If they inpatient level of care, then the parent takes them out, absolutely, that's called a DHS because it's like potentially life-threatening issue. But if they qualify for partial hospitalization level of care, there's nothing that's not reportable. They can take them out of that level of care. I try to work very gingerly, like when I can tell, I mean, you can tell pretty quickly, can't you, when there's like, that's kind of situation. I try to work really gingerly with the parents initially, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they just truly cannot tolerate, and then sometimes they come back a year later and they're like,
they do come back, yeah.
I really wish we had listened. Yeah.
There's not going to be a good ending to it, and know that, and they know that we know what we're doing, so they usually do come back. But otherwise, that's different for you, because you're seeing regularly.
Right. I think the other issue is there's show up that parents use to run into based on what we're getting from the intake and the need program. They're maybe, but in terms of its behaviors, but of course, then getting the parent in is actually not allowed.
And since need isn't really technically an inpatient, that wouldn't count, right?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Sitting there with the data.
Right.
Knowing about the risk.
Right. If you get information that says, look, if we brought this child to main med today, she's admitted inpatient, that absolutely, I'd call DHS in a case like that. Yeah. They won't bring them. I mean, it's still, you feel they should be in the ER, or they should be directly admitted, or, yeah. Yeah. I think that's more and more, maybe not to that extreme, but parents are having harder, I don't know what it is culturally that's shifting, having a harder and harder time doing what it takes to have their child recover from this illness, which is awful and it's difficult and it feels worse, and there's no way they want to find a way to have their child on board, and that with anorexia nervosa, that's so unlikely.
You're afraid to rock the boat just because of the way mental illness and, the suicide things that I'm finding is that they're so afraid to, and we've talked about this, sort of, a certain kind of authority, which is what I guess it seems like to them over their child, that they're just like walking on eggshells and, do you think you might want an apple for snack?
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me. There's way more power in the child's hands, it seems like, than the parent these days.
Which really feels frightening to the child, that parents, that's what I try to help them to understand, but, I'm doing the same thing. It's just difficult. Yeah. But I have a little hate to, make do anything he doesn't want to do, too, so I'm not one to speak.
So you understand.
I understand. Yeah, but if it's life-threatening, I would, but yeah, tough. I would say that's the hardest part of that particular work, working with people with anorexia nervosa, that's what we talked about. We have to really balance our caseload to make that we have, people are also motivated. People with binge eating disorder, people are often very motivated to get help, and it just helps to have that because you're almost always hated by the person with anorexia nervosa.
Everybody loves you and they have binge eating disorder.
Yes. So.
It seemed to be worse in terms of the, just talking about in terms of the having the power than the parents in the higher, the socioeconomic
Yes.
towns. It's just kind of like, it intensifies it to some extent. I don't know if you guys have noticed that too.
One of the, I was going to also ask is, could you talk a little bit about what the treatment is for binge eating disorder, and also the aspect of what I find with the teenagers with binge eating disorder is there's so much shame still around it that they're not ready to embrace treatment. They wish they don't have, then treatment will involve actually talking about it, and what's the best approach to try to and then be an accurate and to be able to have kind of an accurate understanding of what the treatment is. So that's what I really kind of give.
It'd be nice if we had some like literature we could give you around it, so they would be less threatened because it's really actually really they love it. They love it. It's basically intuitive eating, and so it's teaching them to listen to their body signals. The weight is an issue. Weight is sort of like over here. Back to what we said about the growth chart. It's like, he's always been a higher weight. They're probably always going to be a higher weight, and that's the way it is. And we can, which is a hard pill to swallow in terms of culturally, but getting them to listen to their body's cues, what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, legalizing all foods. So sugar is not bad anymore. Carbs aren't bad anymore. We integrate all those foods. Oftentimes I do get referrals from big kids for weight loss, and that's funny because I get them and I'm thinking that the physician or nurse practitioner, whoever the provider thinks it's going to be a weight loss thing, but we just do intuitive eating and they get better really quickly. The binging stops, the struggle stops. It's like the nicest group of people to work with, I think.
The reason that we legalize all foods, including sugar, is that part of what happens, part of what drives binge eating disorder is deprivation. Either they're told they can't have something, or they tell themselves they can't have something. There is no physical access, so let's say they're in a home where there's no desserts ever available. And they're at a friend's house, and there's like multiple desserts available. And that for some people, that really leads to binge eating or overeating. And what happens is they start feeling bad about themselves and start like saying negative things about themselves around that, and then the next day, they may not eat as much because they feel so bad about what they did last night at someone's house, and they start restricting, and then the physical deprivation then leads to more binge eating, and before you know it, they're just feeling
and they're gaining weight.
And they're gaining weight as a result of their eating pattern being so dysregulated. So that we work to legalize all foods, and actually having those foods in abundance is what actually makes things calm down. It's kind of fascinating because culturally we're told, just don't bring those foods to your house and you'll be fine. But for people, that does create the opposite effect. And so that's the model that we found most effective over time over any other treatment model. And
it doesn't mean they're going to lose weight, and I guess that's the important thing for you guys to know is that oftentimes their weight just sort of stabilizes at that higher weight just because metabolically they now have those fat cells, they're not going to be going, it's really difficult to lose weight once you've gotten your set point up here. It's hard to, 90% of people who try to lose weight gain it back, given 5 years. 2/3 of those people gain back more than what they started. So if they've been trying to restrict and then they're gaining, and now their set point's here, and it probably would have been here, but with a binge eating disorder, but you can't really get it back down to here. It's nearly impossible to get it back down to here. So they might stay at this place, but that's okay because they can still be healthy. So they still get good nutrition, they can still be active, they can still, have social support and variety in foods around them and live totally happy, healthy lives. It's just that we have to take the weight loss thing out of it because then they're going to start yo-yoing again, which actually is not good for you to yo-yo like that. Better just to stay at this weight than to be going up and down, up and down, up and down.
this is like an 4-hour to 8-hour talk that we do. It's very hard to because sometimes it can seem like,
What do you think about?
why are you not talking about weight loss with somebody who's, what if they're 200 pounds? That's a difficult thing for us to explain. I mean, we've done a lot of research around this, and really, when we worked at the New England Eating Disorders Program, really worked to find a model that makes sense. And for years, because there's a lot of models that just aren't effective for treating binge eating disorder. And this actually opened up our world to reading books like Big Fat Lies, which I recommend everybody in this culture reading that book. It's written by have you read it? Isn't that something?
You did?
Really? Oh, awesome. It's awesome. And it's written by an exercise physiologist. This is awesome. Fat Politics, another one.
Is really good.
It's a book written by a professor who kind of looked at okay, so why are we being lied to in this culture around all the stuff around body size and food and all of this?
Because he started writing about the obesity epidemic,
Yeah.
right? And then he switched it once he got into it and was like, wait a minute, there's no evidence.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so he follows the money trail of really how money is behind a lot of what we're told and that we're following in this culture. It's awesome.
Really good.
Yeah. So if it's ever, I'm happy to put together a list of
One I just brought it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have a resource list.
And we have an article that we hand out to patients as well, so we could, share that as well, the Recipe for Life article that I usually have people read, and I tell them, so at the first session when I'm starting the assessment, I'll read it and I'll say, if reading this, it just does not feel like a fit to you, this is not going to be a match. But most of them come in, they feel like it was written for them. Yeah. Yeah. That model of treatment is my favorite, even though I've done a lot with Maudsley family based, and I really think it's an effective and important model. You feel like you've done something by the end of that. Geez, that really helped to put in saving this person from this life-threatening illness. But that one's just more fun.
It's fun because they can't believe that they can eat these foods, and then it's almost magical that they stop desiring them as much once they bring them in, and they're just thrilled.
Some of the older people will come in thinking that they, are sugar addicts or food addicts, and they, and then once they start getting exposed to having more of those foods around and allowing themselves to have it, it's amazing to see. Anyway,
and it's just funny because they come in kind of, shamed and well, this was, yes, I was bad, and then I was good, and you're sort of sitting there just waiting to the end, so you can let them know that there's more good and bad. This is the way it is. You need to listen to your body's cues, hunger and fullness, and make a match, and all these tools that we give them. It's just fun because they feel like they can finally eat normally, and they do. Yeah. And most of my people do really well with it.
Yeah. There's another book that I'm reading right now that some of you might be interested in. It's called Eat What You Love, Love What You Eat, a mindful eating approach for people with prediabetes and diabetes, and it's awesome. Intuitive eating for people with diabetes. It's great. The shame out of there's a lot of shame in our culture around having diabetes. Anyway, so.
I had one kid on Monday who one of her reasons she's not ready yet to tackle the binge eating is that her appropriate awareness that it is one of her strategies.
Uh-huh.
So very much tied to how stressful the day was at school. And she lived on a great facade at school and then sort of has no part at home because she's substitute binging. So what in your treatment do you guys sort of work on that as a primary?
Sometimes it's very clear that that's the psychological component to it, that it's really not being driven by dieting type behaviors or body image stuff. Then there's another model of treatment that I use called internal family systems, and so I'll talk with them about, it's too much to go into now to explain it, but I'll talk with them about the process, how, we have multiplicity, meaning we have parts of us, and we all use this language. We say a part of me thinks this and a part of me thinks that, and how certain parts can become extreme and to help us. And no parts are bad, all parts are, really have benevolent intention to try to help us. Each part that has us, going to food or alcohol or gambling or video games or any of those things to excess are just simply trying to help us because they don't know any other way. And so the treatment is really to help people to kind of connect with that part and have some compassion for it, continue to allow the behavior initially, which is helpful for people. I have this solid base of compassion and starting to work with that part on seeing if it would be willing to try some other things. And kind of a fun, that's also kind of a fun model of treatment that as well. Is that that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So once you straighten out the deprivation piece and figure that out, if that's not going to do it, then you can switch to that.
Yeah. Some people who like feel so bad about their bodies that they just can't, because if someone doesn't, with binge eating disorder treatment, if someone doesn't start to build some compassion for themselves and some acceptance to their body where it is right now, whether it's going to change in the future or not where it is right now, then they can't stabilize their eating pattern, because then it's being driven, the eating is being driven by feeling shame and feeling bad about themselves. So I will oftentimes use that model of treatment to help people come to that place to build forward.
I have a therapist, and I can't send them to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys would suggest in terms of, from the side of the coverage, in terms of what kind of referral or like sort of do the referring patients?
I said the last one, and I'll say it again. The growth charts.
Yeah.
So helpful. They usually don't come for some reason in the referral. Yeah. Whole thing, which is great, you know what I mean? It's like everything's there, it's very thorough, but then I'm like, there's no growth. So I can't tell like where the person's supposed to be, and you know that already, but yeah, that would be helpful.
We can start
Separate, yeah.
like, if you're missing the growth chart, like,
That's usually do. I usually just call or whatever and get it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Together, an appropriate referral other than somebody who needs hospitalization. Because mostly family-based treatment is really, it's a model that they don't take anybody who's 25% or more below their healthy weight, their ideal body weight. And they also want to get the growth curves to kind of make sure that that's not the case. That's like a higher level of care territory right there, just based on their body weight. But other than that, someone who really like could qualify for partial hospitalization, but the family wants to try outpatient first, again, as long as they're medically stable, I will do that.
And you do assessments yourself.
I used to do most of the assessments at Mercy, and so I've had 14 and a half years practice at doing this. I do a full comprehensive assessment. Sometimes in one session, if something's urgent and we really just need to get going, I'll consolidate it, but otherwise 2 sessions to complete a 1.5 sessions. And then the half of that second session, I talk with the family about the recommendation. And some recommendation is a higher level of care, and sometimes it's to continue with me. Having an opening. So I to run full, so if something's urgent, then I may need to send them away. Always checking. Other questions?
I have last week, so she's tiny, everyone's tiny. Her folks was like 8% off her weight, and then maybe 10% off her age. This is a sector that mom has contacted me ahead of time saying, I want to make sure we talk about what she's eating, but don't say that I'm worried. So I'll have a mom's conversation, and then, when the mom says that she's eating, broke down preteen, so mom is in the room and having, like, this conversation.
Did you feel like anything was wrong?
No, I think it's done that anything wrong. She's a teenager, she's not gonna let on. Like,
Did she have a change in her weight or anything?
no, she's growing so.
Oh, yeah.
But mom's worried that she has some controlling behaviors around eating, and that she's not embracing her, like, her changing body. With a case like that, I'm like, I don't know what to do for you unless you're willing to have a conversation and
Yeah.
so that
pull, your hands are tied.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the second year that this has happened. Mom doesn't get loud.
So she's sort of tying her hands
Yeah.
as the mom.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have mom.
That's the thing that we've been talking about.
Yep.
Like, it's just afraid her, like, what's going to happen if she says, I'm worried about you
Right.
around this, like,
Yeah.
what happens? She can run away? I don't know. It's amazing.
It's very frustrating. So
Yeah.
I think I explained to mom, like, we're going to talk about it, like, but
Yeah.
I was like, from a psychiatric standpoint, one, obviously, I worry about mom's history of eating disorder, she's projecting on kids.
Oh.
I would worry a lot about that. The thing is, I always tell parents that when the kids are a certain age, anything you say to me, I'm gonna let the kid know that I'm getting this information. So I sort of say, thank you for the information, I really look forward to us all being able to talk about it together in the appointment. And giving me info time, or we find out that having that conversation did not end the world.
So,
this is the oldest of three girls, just wait for it to happen. So I give you an email with Christy. Will you be able to send maybe a list and then?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
If anybody wants one of these are put out by the Academy for Eating Disorders. I've only got 6 of them, unfortunately.
Take one for the, like,
Okay.